the D21 Budget Committee second meeting for the school year 2022-2023. With that, I'll call the meeting to order, and if everybody can unmute, stand, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, thank you, everyone. First off, we have an action item to approve the Budget Committee meeting minutes from April 26th. Judy?
Chair, move to approve the Budget Committee minutes as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Director Richardson and seconded by Director Nelson. I guess we'll just raise our hands for the vote. For everyone in favor.
Do you want to do a roll call? We've done that in the past. That seems to be best when we're virtual, especially.
Yeah, there we go.
We could do that. It's just the long list. We'll do that. Oh, excuse me. Good catch. Before we do the vote, Director Rasmussen, you want to do the vision and mission statement?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess we kind of skipped over that. Okay. Our mission statement is graduating all students to be college and career ready. It's challenging and is inspiring and empowering them to be healthy and productive citizens. The vision statement is North Wasco is a premier school district. We provide students a rigorous and relevant education with schools performing academically in the top 5% of the nation. Our students are inspired by a talented, innovative, and highly effective staff that values continuous professional growth. Our district graduates citizens who are ethical and motivated to achieve their limitless potential. North Wasco is fully embraced by the community, reflecting its health and well-being.
Thank you, Director Rasmussen. Now we'll do a vote. Director Lopez? I'll do a roll call vote. If you can unmute. Director Lopez?
I think he's frozen. Oh, no.
Yeah.
He had his hand up though.
I'm trying.
Director Rasmussen?
Yes.
Director Nelson?
Yes.
Director Stevens, is he here? I don't see Brian.
No, Brian.
Director Aparicio?
Aye.
Director Richardson?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers? She wasn't here. Ms. Mendoza?
And she is sitting in the attendee room. I think we just need to bop her over to a panelist.
Yeah, I've tried a couple times.
Oh, she needs to pick it up.
Yep.
Hello. Hello.
We can hear you. It's very choppy.
Hello.
That's better. Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I was gonna say, sorry, I'm not sure what's going.
Okay, Director Sawyer? Or Mr. Sawyer?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson? If I messed it up.
Yes.
And Ms. Begay?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so it's passes. Next is public comments, and we did not have any public comments. So we'll move on to Mrs. Flath and the review of the budget documents.
Just a moment for a point of order, Chair Jones. Moving forward, perhaps it may be more efficient to use the raise hand function for future votes, unless someone does not have access or it's not enabled. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. I apologize. I sent out the revised document a little later than I would like. We might need to, there you go, thank you. So I have a revised note on it on the top. Can you see my screen okay? I should check, okay. Not much has changed, and I will add to this write-up for our adopted budget document as time goes on before we actually adopt the full budget in the budget cycle. Only a few things changed. This number did go up by 384,000, and that is because, was there a question, Dawn? Was that for me? No.
Yeah, actually, if you scroll up, I just want to make a note that there's an error on the the elected members. Jose is the chair and John is, and then David is the co-chair.
I will get that fixed. That's what happens when you reuse stuff. You don't apologize. Good note. I will highlight those so I do not.
I think that's correct, actually. If you're talking about who's the chair of the budget committee, Dave is the budget chair. Is that what that is indicating?
No.
No, that is the board members. It's just yeah, because it was that way last year. I didn't update those.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah. Thank you. Good note. So the change included in the state funds for 384,000 for the state retention grants for staff that is associated with House Bill 4030. So I added that to this budget, and you'll see that increase. The general fund went down just 27,000. We had to reallocate our, you guys may not want to know all this detail, but it's our unfunded actual liability. It's our PERS bond rate. What ends up happening is we pay directly from the state school fund an amount in equal of 12 payments, and we book that as a retirement payment on behalf of employees because it's part of our retirement liability account. So they call it the UAL account if you hear those. So we reallocated those. So very minor changes between those, but it's based on how many staff we have. So updated that. There was one other technical change I made to this 401 capital projects fund. I don't want to skip ahead too much, but I'll just tell you briefly. The way I had the functions lined out, it was all in support services. Well, really anything we do in most of what we do in the capital projects fund will be a capital outlay expenditure. So I adjusted that to have it in the 4,000 function, which is capital outlay. And I'll show you that later, but that would save us from having to do a supplemental budget hearing later in the year, which we don't want to have to do if we don't have to. This information is the same. If there were questions, I will Lucille, I will update these before we actually publish this document, just so you know. And I would also take feedback. If there's other things that you think the public would be interested in hearing, please let me know, because I've picked information that I thought was interesting or provide some perspective, but I'm happy to elaborate or decrease if that's the case.
Cara, John has his hand up and I have a question too, so I'll let him
Oh,
go
yes, ma'am.
first.
Go ahead. Oh, who's first?
John.
Oh, John, I think had his hand up. Did you?
Yeah, that was from earlier, the earlier vote.
I apologize. My question has to do with the English language curriculum. We just adopted that $770,000. Is that in the textbook adoption line item?
Yes, it is included in there. Now, I do actually have those lovely requisitions right on my desk. There is a chance we will have them paid this year, but they may also roll into July. So that adoption is about $725,000 with some training that was added in there. It is budgeted for next year, but some of it may come this year and some may come next year, but it is included in next year's budget. But it isn't part of the textbook. It's textbook adoption. Yes. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I may be missing something. I had the other version we had the other day pulled up, and those numbers are the same as you're showing. So and the one that you just sent out. So I just want to make sure we're looking at the right version.
That would be me that would do that. Let me check here to make sure. Let me go down below because that's where you can see it. You know what, John, I think you're right, because I think I updated this table. Let me go down here. Yeah. I didn't get that first table updated, so I will make a note. Just in this first table. Sorry about that. Sorry, you're gonna see all my scrolling, and I hope you don't make you sick. So these are the updated numbers with the accounts, the 59,767. I just inadvertently missed those first two tables because I remember coming down to these two. And if you go to the state special functions down here, this 5253 numbers, what should be in that table. So I'll revise that and get you a clean copy, but it includes the reason that went up again is this particular, these staff retention grants. The new information just came out in this last week, maybe week and a half. And essentially, we do have union leadership here, but we have to meet and come up with a tentative plan to spend this $384,000 by May 27th and submit a plan to ODE, which we will begin working on after these meetings. So, and it's kind of, there's a few areas it can be spent on, but we haven't had time to really process internally, but I did want to make sure that's built into our budget so we don't have an issue later. The rest of the numbers will stay the same. The categories will adjust a little bit for that UAL adjustment and adding those grants. And then also adjusting, I don't want to mouse around too much, but adjusting for both this capital outlay expenditure, which is also there, and in the function levels. And I added this. So here's a technicality that I need to learn about our system is that anytime we pay stipends to staff, our system calculates it as FTE. It's not additional FTE. So I went through each person, and that's largely why this took me so long to get this out to you. And I wanted you to see what the revised numbers are, because some of these have, like we have some night custodians, they actually get a stipend for working evenings, and our system was calculating it like it was additional FTE, but we aren't adding more people. So I went through and lined that out. There were also a couple things like 0.1 of our innovations director is actually paid with the NORCOR funding because she oversees that. So I made sure that it's split out by funding source so you can see that. Again, it's largely licensed staff. We have specialist staff, usually in the SPED department, that have a stipend in there. So I had to pull all of those items out. So you'll see Innovative Programs Director. I just thought that one would stand out to you, but that's paid out of our JDEP funds. Then I broke it down by location, so you can see what that is. The confidential staff includes the business office staff, Cindy Miller on the call, and our human resources staff. We have a front desk person. Directors of communication, that is one we talked about, which is now Stephanie. And then I've listed out, so each school will have included in maintenance will be a lead custodian and probably a night custodian assigned to that area. We have nutrition, which is the lunch staff. ESP is going to be a variety of different, it could be a Title I assistant, it could be duty aid. There's a little range of that. And then of course there's principals. And I did list separately just so you can see what amount of special education staff we hope to have at each of our schools. And I'm going to say we hope because we did have a large vacancy rate over in special education. That was definitely a problem. And if Amy were here, she would definitely echo that. That's been a struggle. In total, I think right now we have about 30 positions that we don't have filled. Maybe 3 of those are new, so 27. So it's been a struggle, and getting substitutes to come in, which is why we canceled the ESS contract. So we built in substitutes as employees in these numbers. So just FYI. District-wise going to include, we have trade staff. This is just part of one maintenance, but they're also in here. We have trade staff and other. Actually, this is our courier. And some are unassigned to particular areas. They bounce around from one place to another. These particular 2 paid under state special funds are going to be our instructional coaches. We have math and English language, right? I'm looking for Dr. Bernal. I think I got that right. And then this is our tradespeople, and then part of our courier. Innovations Academy is the new section. When you see these, some of these are going to be also associated with Riverbend. So Riverbend is included as part of Innovations Academy. It's a section of it. That's 4 of these FTE at this point. The rest, we do have maintenance, just like everywhere. We have a lead custodian, night custodian assigned to the building. We have 1 lunch person assigned. And then we have 1 secretary 3, I believe she is. And then there's the director, which is Kimberly. And then licensed teachers. And this also services the NORCOR program. Just keep that in mind. And SPED staff, there's 1 staff member assigned to work all of those programs. And that's tentatively what we planned on having in there. And that includes the virtual school too, which we've had all year. Is that a question, Jody?
Yeah.
You just muted again. So it was probably a great
Sorry.
question.
Sorry, trying to go back a little bit. When you were talking about building in the subs, how many subs are you building in?
We are building in a number, we are building in a financial number, not a particular FTE number. It would be hard to delineate that into FTE. So what I've done is gone back and look at how much we've spent in substitutes in the last 3 or 4 years, and it's about 385,000. So that's what we collectively have built in, is 385,000 plus benefits.
Okay, and is that licensed and ESP?
Licensed ESP, yep.
Okay, and that's so that's not assigned to a specific school, that's district-wide.
It's not included in FTE because I didn't allocate it as FTE. So it's assigned to each school and district-wide because they all have substitutes.
Gotcha.
And
Thank you.
facilities and nutrition, it's a potential for all of them. Yeah. And admin might have a small amount of substitutes. Does that help? Sorry, some additions. So this student services sections, just for note, is staff assigned to special education under Amy Hampton's direction who work in all the buildings. They may rotate from one area to another. So when we say things are district-wide, it's because they're not specifically assigned to one building. The Dallas High School, see their numbers there. Middle school, they have a principal and a vice principal, so that's why you see that there. And noted the Dallas High School used to have 2 vice principals, but we are moving that 1 vice principal to a district-wide athletic director. So that's included in the proposal, which is, looks like some of his funding would come out of there. Just so we're appropriately allocating some of the funding, it's kind of a, so as much as you can, you're supposed to allocate costs to schools because it's part of the ESSA per pupil expenditure reporting. So it's trying to keep it accurate to what districts spend on each school and is it equitable to other locations. So that's kind of the nerdy end. And this particular one is me. I spend more time on transportation. So 0.15 is charged there, which is legitimate. And the reason it's important is because we do get reimbursed for 70% of the 0.15 of my time spent on transportation. And that is new this particular year. I changed that this year based on how much time I really do spend on transportation. I could easily justify 15%. Jody?
On Innovations Academy, I thought last time you said 13.5 FTE. Did you say this time
14.24? And it's because one of the Norcor ones I had left in the high school, so I had to bop that one over.
Understood. Thank you.
It's still trying to keep that separated. They're very meshed. And there is some high school success money still being spent at Innovations Academy because that is meant for high school students. So that's what you'll see some of the state special money in Innovations Academy, like the ALC program. Transportation. And this one's just a note, we do specifically track what we spend on transportation services for special education students because it goes into our maintenance of effort, which I think we briefly talked about it last time, which is a big deal for districts. Everyone, it's probably more than you want to know. It's just that we have to maintain the same level of effort, whether it's per student or in total on special education. This year will be a tough year because of all the vacancies I talked about. So we're probably going to have a justification with ODE. They do a calculation come April of next year is when we'll have to talk with them. Hey, we had all these vacancies. We can demonstrate that we've been trying to fill them all year. But that's just a little nuance that comes in there. The purpose of that is to maintain our same level of federal funding. So worst case, the federal government would say, sorry, you guys didn't maintain it, you get less federal money, which isn't because we cut any services, it's because we couldn't find the services. So that is a reason we can justify it. And then, yes, Jose?
Is there a way to overlay just kind of what the FTEs were from last year to know kind of where our ups and downs were? I mean, with the exception of, Innovations Academy being fully new, I mean, that's all plus. But then it'd be nice to just kind of see, our staff's largely staying building to building the same. Are we adding? And I know this was a little more relevant, with SIA being newer last year.
Mhm.
But I think it's still helpful to see and understand. And I think what's helpful from what you pull together for today, I mean, just seeing the amount of ESSER dollars going towards 30 FTE is pretty crazy. I don't know if people fully realize that. I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to see it in the FTE, because that's our neighbors, that's our community members. I mean, represented in that 30.
Yeah, and some of those are going to be like Title I. We do have
Yeah.
that will continue, but just over 19 of that 30 is ESSER funds. So that was the note I wanted to make. It's about equal to what we talked about last time, and I'll add this to this write-up before we release it to the public, but is about 20 of the FTE, and it's about 5.5 days of school to make up what we would have. So let's say ESSER goes away tomorrow and our general fund revenue isn't increased, we would either have to cut 20 people, and that's just an average across the district, or 5.5 days of instruction, and not pay people for those 5.5 days, like the whole district.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the last year's reports. Because it was, the way it was listed out is unusual. I will add it to it though. Because I do have it from last year. So other than having a lot of blank pages, to go away. Sometimes my computer does that. It doesn't like too many pictures or something.
Can I ask a stupid question while
There
you're
are no
doing that?
stupid questions.
Yeah. How much of a re-enrollment, how much of the recovery of enrollment would we have to achieve to meet that gap when we lose ESSER funds?
That's
Do you
a good
know?
question. Yeah, I can do the math real quick.
I mean, I appreciate the question from Chair Aparicio. Looking forward, we're not going to always have ESSER, and I appreciate you calling it out too, but I think that many times we go to year with our budgets and
Yeah, and it looks like it works because it keeps going, right? And it's about, if you were to use this year's rates, it's about 154 students. And if we look at the enrollment, and that is something I'll add, is this year's enrollment. I don't want to make people dizzy, but that's a very valid point. That's not good. 2770, yeah, is about where we are now. So we would have to get close to 2,900 plus a little bit. But if you do look back, even back to 2019, we were close to where we need to be fully functional funding if it were to stay static the same. So only a few years ago. Okay, and I think those were the updates that I gave you from what we had before. Let me scroll down and make sure I highlighted anything that was different. Okay, yeah, I put capital outlay. Yep, I didn't. Did anybody have any follow-up questions as they thought about things? And Jody, I will say the Grow Your Own Teacher, it was $20,050, and it was based on the teachers that were assisting or mentoring other people, other teachers, and it was actually a grant mostly from the college. So some of it may continue into next year. I'm just tracking the money separately so we know what that was. I think that was the only other questions that we discussed. Did you have something else, Jody?
So kind of back to Chair Aparicio's question of comparing the FTEs from last year to this year, how many, I'm having a hard time adding up how many ads we have this year of FTEs.
And like you and I had talked briefly yesterday, there's things we added as the year started from the last budget cycle. And that would have been, you know, as the virtual academy grew, I think we added 1 or 2 people over there. So with the exception of those particular people, the only ones we have added is switching over. That curriculum director position is new. It was previously with the ESD, and we will get that funding back at the end of the next year. So there's that position. We did add the 2 new teachers at the middle school, science and math, I want to say. I have it in the write-up. And then because we created a district-wide athletic director, we are allowing a student success, dean of students kind of position at the high school. So those are the new ones we've intentionally created. Yes.
I didn't ask this last time, but what is the amount of ending fund balance? I guess I'm not really focused on the amount. I guess I'm more as a percentage of the budget. What's our ending fund balance kind of factored in at, and kind of where my mind is going at, you know, that the funding cliff is a concern, and I want to make sure that we're being prudent and planning for it for the future. So I guess that's where I'm looking at ending fund balance and maybe even having a percentage allotted for reserve funds. Because this is something that is going to come at us once those ESSER funds. So I want to make sure that we're being very conscious of that, so that we're not all of a sudden in a scramble mode and having to, you know, be in a situation where we're laying off folks, because that's no fun for anyone involved.
Yeah, and so right now we're looking at ending the year between $1 million to 1.2 million, you know, and there are things that are coming up at the end of the year as we're getting close that are people, and I talk with principals where they're like, oh, I have money, I should spend it. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't spend it, you know, and it doesn't mean that they think, oh, because I have money, I spend it. It's not that. It's that, hey, we've been waiting to see if we had money to do this or to do this. So balancing that with that, so if we end between $1 million and 1.2 million, you know, our general fund budget's 33 million. So it's not 10, you know, that's not 10%. It's going to be half that. So we can, so there's a couple strategies behind that I think, and I think next year would be a really good year to look at how can we build up that fund balance. And good or bad, you know, the way to do that is to spend more federal money in the year, which frees up more general fund, which is an allowable thing to do with the ESSER funds. The thing I caution and what I've been recommending to you all is that we try to be careful about spending it on one-time projects that we really do need to accomplish. And then, you know, keeping ourselves sustainable with still growing a little bit, especially considering we need to look at learning loss mitigation. We need to spend 20% on that, which summer school helps us meet that. Those are all good things, and adding more teachers helps us do that because we are decreasing class sizes and helping people learn. So it's whether or not you want to build that. And then my question would repose as, okay, let's say we get up to $2 million fund balance. Next year, we're just going to keep depleting that, trying to keep up with an unsustainable budget. So it's almost like we should look at, you know, theoretically, you keep your ending fund balance whole, whatever it is, and then you just spend what your current revenues are and don't go beyond that. And we're still doing that because we have federal funds, but that's definitely a strategic long-term thing. The tough part is we don't know what the state school fund will look like next year. And I think the state has purposely kind of, I mean, they've increased it, but I think they've held back on increasing it because they know districts are sitting on these federal funds. The problem is we're sitting on these federal funds because we don't want to spend it all at once and not have that in the back pocket, you know? So it's kind of a double-edged sword where they're like, hey, people aren't spending it. Well, it's a cautionary game. So we can, you know, intentionally work on doing that. And I can certainly do that next year or even this year. We can. And one thing I looked at in this particular budget is there is 300,000 left of ESSER 2 at the end of this next budget year. If we spend it this way, we can still spend it because it's in the budget, but that might be one thing we might want to say, let's just spend that all out because it has to be spent by September of 23 anyway. So if we spend that all out, we could decrease our ending general fund either this year or next year. I would just propose keeping it, you know, working on it next year. We had a lot of projects we've been working on. We have a lot of projects keep coming, but that's just kind of thinking out loud. So something we can strategically do if that's something the board wants to do.
Yeah, and I guess that's where my focus is. I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight of that and make sure that we have kind of a plan of attack, so to speak, on this issue that's going to be looming out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I hate to go too much the other way. Yeah. You heard me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could go on and on. I'll save you. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, my questions were the same as his, was the budget gap issue, but wasn't there a chart where you had beginning fund balance and then the budget and then ending fund balance? Or my eye's not catching it. And if not, is that something I guess you could come up with in future budget presentations?
Yeah, I don't think that's something I had in there, but it would be a good one. I appreciate that. Yeah.
What's the beginning? Well, if this is a balanced budget, so the beginning fund balance was 1.3 or whatever you're stating.
Yes, 1.3. And then estimating, I have to remember how much we're saving, putting aside. I don't know if I put that much aside, but again, we can. Sorry, no. Contingencies. Yeah, I purposely didn't build the contingency, but I know we can leave that in there. So yeah, I can, like I said, spend more in one area because I do think that 384,000 we probably should spend in ESSER funds, and that could free up some general fund. The other flip side is this year we've saved some in general fund because we haven't been able to recruit positions, and on top of it, we haven't been able to get substitutes. So it's a positive financial thing. It's a very negative on the schools and the staff. John Nelson.
Yeah, so with that gap idea and creating a reserve fund, if we ever did that, I don't know. I don't think the district has ever created a reserve fund. Do you know anything about that? Like how you would do that in a budget for that purpose, where you're running out of, say, grant funding and you want to maintain that position and you have to kind of prepare for that. So I just, what is your opinion of that concept?
Yeah, it's always a good thing to have, especially if we don't have capital projects. At the same time, we're also trying to build up capital projects. So we're lowering what we're going to bring in general funds for that. At the same time, we do have our replacement funds. So we have 60,000 in vehicle replacements, bus replacements. We have to do this next year, but thankfully with the transportation director, she's gotten a lot of grants, so we don't have to transfer a lot. We do have technology replacement. I mean, we could move from those in worst case, but the best way to do that would be, I could build in more in contingency. And at the same time, I'm saying, we're still going to I don't want to say hide away. We're still going to end with 500,000 next year. But I also know we have all these funded positions that I don't believe we're going to be able to fill. And I hope I'm wrong and we look at a very different picture. But the way it looks this year, it was tough. Like I said, we ended with 25, 27 vacant positions, and that's tough.
Okay.
So it's kind of like budget for the worst, and then I believe that will go down, but as we go through the year, if for some reason, let's say, yay, thankfully we're fully staffed, then, you know, that would be a conversation where I'd say, okay, I really think we should spend that 300,000 from the ESSER funds, build up that. I think next year's a good year to start looking at building up that reserve, because then ESSER does finish off in 2024. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or thoughts? And Jody?
At the last budget meeting, you talked about the HR assistant that's going to be in charge of recruiting and hiring the substitutes. Where is that in the new ads?
It's in the, it's in the confidential. And what we've looked at and we're going to shoot for next year is, it is in the confidential. However, the successful candidate is someone who already works in the district office. So she's transferring over in July, I believe, to the new position and going to work in HR. We're going to see how, if the office can sustain it without filling that secretary position again. So it's budgeted like, no, we aren't going to fill that secretary, but if we do come to a point and we have the funding, we could fill that secretary position if the budget's there. But we're shooting for without it.
Okay, so that's not an admin pay. It's secretarial pay.
That particular position is an HR assistant level. It's a lower classification than our existing HR assistant specialist. And forgive me on the titles. I butcher them with my previous state experience and call them what I call them. So.
Understood.
Liz, do you have a question, Lizette?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, I'm not sure. I apologize to everyone because I'm new to doing this, and I do have a question, and it cuts me off, but I think everybody can hear me right?
We can.
Okay, good. Thank you. So what I wanted to ask is, since we're doing all this budgeting for the schools, is this also where like raises for the teachers come in hand, or any employees for the district out of this same budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how often do they get raises?
Historically, that's been a yearly process. So we are currently negotiating with our unions to do a 3-year extension on the contract, but we open up the salary and benefits section every year. Generally.
Okay. I mentioned to someone that I was in the budget committee, and they were just, these are parents of kids that I know, and they were just interested in knowing because of the turnover, and not necessarily in one school, but in many of the schools here in our district. So I was just curious. Maybe it's not necessarily due to their pay, but I was just curious in knowing if they do get raises and how often.
Yes, yes. And last year, for example, I think the raise was 3.6%.
Okay, no worries. I appreciate that. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
You are allowed to speak. You are on the budget committee, so you can speak up whenever you wish to.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, so thank you.
And I appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
I strong-armed her into, hey, I know you want to do this. So thank you. Is there any other questions? Okay, I think that sums up any discussion. Oh, Jody?
Sorry.
So close. So close.
I know, so close. I was excited about the district being allowed a budget for bond education. I wasn't aware that we've ever been able to do that in the past. Can you speak a little to that? Is that new?
Well, that is part of our bond planning work. So we have, last board meeting, the board approved the OPSIS contract with this is an architecture firm helping with bond planning. And yes, bond, it's part of the bond process. And then it also included in that number isn't necessarily bond, but I call planning. It's part of the strategic planning contract, which is continuing through the next year, which the board had already approved. So it's part of the cost of bringing in someone to help bring the community together and discuss bond, what people are interested in seeing and where we should go from here, if that helps. And just as a note, you know, through the bond planning process, I will include in our financial write-up, here's where we're at and here's what we're doing with our contractors. So it's transparent, and if people have questions, they can certainly ask them. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have to add.
Okay. If nobody has any other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Chair Jones, do we need a, do we have a script for that?
It was in an email.
Oh, I don't see that. Can we put it up on a screen?
Judy? You're muted.
Chair, I move that the budget for North Wasco County School District 21 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 be approved in the aggregate amount of $59,410,587. I further move that ad valorem property taxes be levied at the rate of $5.2399 per $1,000 of taxable assessed value in support of the general fund.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion made by Director Richardson and seconded by John. Everyone in favor, raise your hands. Okay, the chair votes yes. So it looks like it's unanimous and approved.
All right.
I want to thank everyone for being here. Anyone have any last comments? Judy?
I just want to thank the members of the community who are appointed to the Budget Committee for their hard work and diligence getting through this process. It's really difficult to kind of orient and figure out school financing. I still haven't quite got it dialed. And we're so much more efficient than the city because they're still having their second Budget Committee meeting. So yay, team.
And I appreciate that. And all of you. Thank you.
If nobody has anything else, I will adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
Thank